Thank you, Jeremy. The next speaker is Sam Joyner.
I'm the token contractor on the panel, and I was thinking I was the token contractor in the room until I saw John Morris sitting there, so with Community Asphalt. Good to see you, John. I also knew this when I noticed the other panelists had really nice typewritten pages in notebooks, and I've got chicken scratch up here. So, about being a contractor, and for being one for a long time, I want to point out something to kind of use as a backdrop against my comments. As the general manager for the concrete paving operations for Ajax Paving currently, it would seem, and being that I have been over the last 3 or 4 years very involved with the Florida Department of Transportation with all things to do with concrete paving, I think that's fair to say. My background has been with 2 companies I've worked for about 30 years that were bigger asphalt companies than they were concrete paving companies. And for one company I worked for 25 years, I was very involved in asphalt. In fact, for a lot of projects over about a 12-year period, I did the asphalt mix designs on every job we did. So the way I see, in talking about the questions posed, I'd like to start with more how we spend and allocate our funds over how we raise them. Like Jeremy said, that's not my area of expertise either, how we finance. I got some ideas, but I won't go into that. But what I see, and I'm going to make a lot of my comments kind of specific to Florida, because that's my principal base of operation, although I've worked with a number of DOTs, primarily in the Southeast, Georgia and South Carolina, and some of these same questions in their pavement type selection process. I'm going to make an overall comment about how I see where we are. And I think the process is just frankly too political. And when I say political, I'm not talking about necessarily from input with guys in Tallahassee, in the State House, the legislature, the governor's office, although in other states, I will tell you, it is very obvious that there is a lot of pressure applied from those areas. But when I say political, I mean from even the contracting industries themselves, designers themselves, the comfort zone that people get in from doing what they've always done and not being, as you point out, innovative and stepping outside to look what's out there and what's good for the long term. There's too much protection of industries, be it contractor industries or supplier industries. There is also, and I'm going to say this, Anath's a good friend, I'm glad he's left, but there's a very lazy mindset amongst designers and DOT employees about doing something new or doing something that is a little beyond what they're comfortable in doing. Also, the other thing that's going to get mentioned a lot today, already has been, is life cycle cost analysis. Life cycle cost analysis is necessary to make good investment decisions. But in my view, having reviewed, I don't know how many pavement type selection reports over the last 3 years that contain life cycle cost analysis. And I've seen a lot of improvement in how they were done over 3 years because they were an abomination when I first saw them. I don't think necessarily life cycle cost analysis is the culmination of pavement type selection. I know some states like Michigan have a very well-defined, they're 17 years, I think, down the road in doing this, where they do a life cycle cost analysis. They submit it to both the concrete industry and the asphalt industry, and you have time to give your comments, and then they go forward with the project. And everybody kind of understands, as they say up there, what's in the black box that determined that. I don't really share that view because I think there's a lot of gray in making a pavement type selection. I think what life cycle cost analysis will do is it will prevent wrong answers. It will show you what's not the solution for a project. But it will also show a lot of times for a lot of types of transportation projects that there are more than one workable solution. It's just like engineering. If you ever had to testify in a court case, like I have, dealing with construction issues, lawyers don't get engineering because they think there's one definitive right answer and that's it. But what engineering, as we all know, is about is there's a range of right answers. How you design a bridge foundation, a footing, what pavement selection. Life cycle will keep you in that sweet spot. And for that, I think it's imperative that it be done. It's imperative that it be done correctly. One of the weaknesses in what we're seeing, particularly in Florida, is that, and I think, again, Jeremy touched on this briefly, my ears perked up, is that it doesn't address product-specific inflation. It basically takes the consumer price index or something like that and applies to both sides, and we know that doesn't work. And I don't know what oil fracking in the Bakken field of North Dakota or the Eagle Ford shale field of Southwest Texas is going to do to the future of oil prices, particularly the kind of oil that they make asphalt from. But I don't think it's going to change that much. So you've got an inflationary pressure on one product that you don't really have so much maybe on the other. And life cycle cost at this point doesn't really address that. Without using life cycle cost, you're making a blind pavement type selection decision, in my view. And you're giving in to these political entrenched pressures that departments have always used to make these decisions. And then you're exposing your present and future funding levels to a lot of unknown risk. But besides the inflation one I just mentioned, there are others. Anath said something talked a lot about preservation of the existing system and the condition of it. And we do have a good highway system here in Florida. But my opinion is that having worked here for a dozen years or more, and in the go-go days of 04, 05, 06, when highway department budgets here were very robust, $4+ billion, the state of Florida was spending, if I'm not mistaken, something close to $1 billion a year in resurfacing asphalt. Now that's gone down as our budgets have gone down, but it's still a significant portion. So I was struck before I worked for a pure paving company, how much money, just what Anath was talking about, the state of Florida alone spends to preserve good highways and good rideability. Now, if it's $500 million or $1 billion, that's money that's not going into new capacity. That's money that's not going into building infrastructure to support our ports, which was always a big thing in my mind as we sit here while they're building a new Panama Canal and we're getting ready to have Panamax tankers coming to the east coast of the United States, and most of the port facilities in Florida aren't even capable of handling them because we've got this really robust resurfacing program. To do away with that, obviously, if you went with a different pavement type selection process, such as concrete, you've got a higher initial cost. So these are balances, and these are the issues that I see us having to really address the handoff. But one thing I've always said is that a good engineer, a good like DOT person, whether it be a bureaucratic engineer or the secretary, good engineers can look at construction projects and inherently know if that's a concrete job or if that's an asphalt job. I believe that. When I worked in the state of Texas, I witnessed them do that, and they did it without life cycle cost for the most part. I may be as impartial a person in the room as there is between asphalt and concrete. That's why I told you a little bit about my history.